Hey there, friend. Welcome back to the Big Thinker, Deep Feeler podcast. I'm your host, Benjamin Fritz, and I'm so happy to have you here today. On this podcast, we talk all things finding ourselves, collaborating with others, and communing with nature so that we can change the world. Because who doesn't want to do that? If that's your thing, you found the right place, and I'm happy to have you here. Today, we're going to be talking about, per usual, really, finding a purpose and fulfilling that, finding meaning, creating an impact, and changing the world. So we're right on brand, but we have a very specific lens that we're looking through, which is how to do this as a parent. I want to talk about a few things in particular here because I've had some meaningful shifts, and I want to not only share those, but also explore how, if you are a parent or if you know somebody who is, just some ways that you might go about kind of taking some of this and putting it into your life. And the reason that feels meaningful to me is not because I know what I'm doing 8 weeks into being a parent, but more so as like starting some ideas. And I think a lot of that is sparking something for you, because I think a lot of parents really struggle with this, especially when you do want to make an impact and change the world, all those things. Finding yourself and your place in the bigger picture can be really hard. And I know that because I've heard it from other people, other parents. So I want to recount a little bit of my journey with that, where I'm at, kind of how I got to this place, where I'm at now, and where I see myself going with it, and why I am really, really excited about it. So let's first talk about kind of where I'm coming from. I'm not going to go into like a full backstory here, but basically how I got to this point and this transition point in my life from not being a parent to being a parent has been really meaningful and powerful for me. So the nutshell is I got a job in corporate 2 years out of school. Right out of school, worked it for 2 years. Good job. Immediately I was just like, this doesn't feel right to me. I can't possibly do this for the rest of my life. I just feel boxed in. I feel like I'm wasting my potential. I feel like I'm meant for more. I could be doing something of meaning with my life instead of just kind of what felt like at the time wasting away in this cubicle. So basically the last 10 years of my life has been a journey. You can go back and check out other recordings to learn a little bit more about that. But essentially, through that decade of exploration, of trying things, of starting businesses, of finding my passion and my purpose, hitting a rock bottom in terms of health, finances, just the whole gamut, right? I met my wife, all these things happened. I recently wrote a Substack post on kind of recapping this decade. And I kind of, the way that I've been phrasing this, and I kind of led in with this in that post, was I found myself. And it sounds cheesy and cliche, but that's really how that decade of my life will be remembered to me, because I really do feel that way. And that's meaningful, and it's important to kind of set up this topic today because I kind of had to do that for myself in order to really step into this role of being a parent and figure out who I am in this new phase of my life. Because as any parent knows, your identity changes when that happens. Yes, the core of you is still there, and that's kind of going to be part of what we're talking about here today. But a very, very meaningful part of your identity has shifted, and you've now become something else, and you are responsible for another human being in a life, and you love this thing more than anything you ever have before, and it's just this whole new journey. So for me to get to this point was a long time coming, basically, in that I am somebody that has been very selfish, honestly, over the last decade of my life. And I don't say that in a negative way. Sometimes it could be, of course, but that was really meaningful for me. And I'm so glad that I was as selfish as I was to get to a point where I felt like I know myself, I'm confident in who I am, what my place is in the world, how I can give back, and all that good stuff. There was a big turning point a year and a half ago. At that point in time, my wife and I had learned that we got pregnant, and shortly thereafter had a miscarriage. This was obviously a big moment. You get very excited to start a family, and just that choice in and of itself is a lot. So to find out that you're pregnant and that your life is going to be changing is a whirlwind of emotions to try to wrap your head around that, and then to quickly learn that this is not actually going to happen is just it just added more to the pot. So there was a huge energetic shift at that point. It's mental, emotional, spiritual, for my wife, obviously physical, just everything kind of thrown up in the air, and just a lot of kind of recentering, right? To figure out just in general, like where are you at then after that, and what matters in life? Are you in the right place? Are you doing everything you can? You start reflecting on everything naturally, because it's just such a monumental experience. Shortly after that happened, that was September of 2021. A couple months after that, I realized that I wanted to quit my business and go back and get a full-time job. That was something that it just felt right. And I say want to, I just made air quotes here on my YouTube recording, because that was a really difficult decision to make. It was very scary. When I left a corporate job 10 years ago, I basically swore that I would never go back. So that was a huge shift in and of itself, but it felt right. I've talked about that, so you can go back to that point in time. I shared a lot during that time about what that was like for me, and everything that brought up, how I got to that point, listening to my intuition, the anxiety and stress that came up from that, making that shift, looking for a job, etc. So I made that choice. At the time, I was driving Uber Eats. So I was phasing out of my business. I was driving Uber Eats to basically pay the bills, to just make ends meet while I was in this transition phase. And so one night I was driving. This was probably mid-November. So this is a while after the miscarriage. I had processed it. I had kind of made my peace with it. Obviously, grief is not linear. It ebbs and flows. Anybody who has gone through a loss of some sort knows this to be true. But at this current point in time, like I said, I'd made my peace with it, and I wasn't really thinking about it much anymore. So I'm out and I'm driving, And a lot of times when I drove, I would either listen to music, just kind of jam out, and let myself space and think about things. Sometimes I would have no music on. I would literally just think. Other times I'd listen to podcasts. It was football season, so I consume all sorts of fantasy football content because I'm a nerd in that way. But on this particular night, I was driving, I was listening to music, and all of a sudden, I kind of felt the presence of my unborn child. This may sound a little crazy, but what happened then was my child communicated with me, and it's so weird to talk about because it's like, did I hear it? Did I feel it? I don't know. There was just this overwhelming message of, you weren't ready. It was crystal clear. And I just received that. Like I said, I don't know, I don't really even know if it was a voice or if it was an energy or what it was, but it was like very clear that it was my unborn child. Like it felt like that. And it was just, the message was given to me with such gentleness. It was so loving and warm. It wasn't blaming at all. You weren't ready. And this just kind of was just this wave that hit me, felt completely out of the blue and just washed over me, and immediately, of course, had just this cascade of emotions. And so I'm driving and I'm crying, and I'm a couple minutes from somebody's house with their food, and just wow, what is happening? And as I'm getting closer, I'm kind of okay, I'm gonna have to pull myself together to be able to drop this food off, and I can try to process this then afterwards and bawl my eyes out or whatever. And as that was happening, because I had my music on shuffle at this point, a song came on that was the song that basically cracked me open and helped me process this whole thing after the miscarriage. So a week or two afterwards, this song came on. I'd never heard it before, came on shuffle, and it was just immediate waterworks, this huge upheaval of emotion at that point in time after the miscarriage. And ever since that, it was my song that has connected me to that child. And so that came on as this happened, and just continued to bawl then. And I pulled it together enough to drop this food off at the door and moved on and continued to cry and process and whatever. Now, I realize that to many that might sound insane, impossible, crazy, whatever. That was my experience. So, take it for what it is. Had somebody told me that I would be communicating with an unborn child, that would sound a little wild to me, but that's what it is. Call it grief, call it God, divine intervention, whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. All I know is that was what I experienced, and at the end of the day, that's what matters, and that's what's real. So it was so impactful, and the reason that I share that story is because it completely shifted me, I should say, didn't completely shift me. It completed the shift of me and my energy. I had basically gotten to this point where I was ready to give up this selfish phase of my life and move into this next phase. But this was the last domino, so to speak, that fell in order to really get me to the place that I needed to be in. And so that, of course, really felt like that was why it happened. And, everything happens for a reason. I needed that. And of course, it didn't feel good in the moment. And even for our family, we were able to shift into a place that really readied us to bring a child into the world. So that gets us to where I was then. I was able to get a job after that. It ended up being the perfect situation. I actually just hit my 1 year there. Just everything that, I could ask for at this point in time. So I'm not going to go into details there, but basically I am where I want to be in my life at this current point in time. I am a parent. I'm still somebody who is, wanting to understand their purpose and their place in the bigger picture. And now I'm doing that with a child as a parent, with this new identity. So that leads me into the way that I feel about being a parent, something that I was able to reflect on in the final months of the pregnancy, was that being a parent is the best thing you could ever do for the world. Now, please understand that I am speaking to parents and people that choose to be parents here. That does not say anything less about you if that is not the path you choose. But in this particular moment, I'm talking to parents and parents to be. It is the work that the world needs. Hands down. Good parents change the world. Not only for your little world of your family and that child, because you are everything to them, and the way that you show up for them and the way that you parent them is everything. It is their world, literally. So that in and of itself is everything. But if you think about it, if you really step back, and this is like what blew my mind to really like get me to shift into this place of a deep understanding of this, is that child, think about everything and everyone that child will come in contact with over the course of their life. And I mean, like, we can't fathom that with our human minds, because it's too big. But that right there is why it is so impactful. Because now everything you've given to that child, they can go out and give to the rest of the world. And so through ripple effect, they can now impact the collective in that way. So the permission that I give to myself and that I give to you, if you are a parent, if you are somebody who is struggling with your identity or trying to figure out your purpose or impact as a parent, at the end of the day, if the only thing, big time air quotes there, the only thing you ever do in your life is be a great parent, you did it. You were amazing. You changed the world. You were exactly who you needed to be. That is the most important work that you could do. Beautiful, right? End of recording. No, so that's the first thing I wanted to impart, because and keep in mind that, like, whenever I'm sharing stuff, it's because I'm speaking to me, right? Like, I need to hear this. And for me, I want to do big things. I always want to just really do as much as I can to make an impact, live up to what I feel my potential is, and put good out into the world. So I need that message, right? So I came up with that for myself, and I'm really truly grounded in that, and I need that, and I come back to that on a regular basis, because I'm still like, it's still my tendency to want to do more. I do want to talk about how we do more and what that could look like if you so choose. But before we do that, I want to quickly make a point to talk about how we can be the best parent that we can be, because I do feel very strongly about this. And that is to work on ourselves, to grow, to evolve, to heal ourself with a capital S. Everything that we are, we need to be able to move through that and to really gain a sense of not only who we are, but our faults, our patterns, our traumas, and work towards acknowledging those, processing those, healing those. Because this immediately, or rather directly, impacts your child. So the more work you do on yourself, the better off your child is. And the reason I mention that is, I think at face value that can feel like, duh, Ben, like that's kind of obvious. But I think that it's even understated. Like that just matters more than anything else. It matters more than any, to me, parenting class, way of parenting. Like, yes, those things are absolutely important, but if you don't have a fundamental understanding of yourself and are not moving towards bettering yourself and growing and evolving and healing, then those things aren't going to make nearly as much of an impact. So the reason I say that is because that can feel selfish as a parent, to take time for yourself, to go to therapy, to hire a coach, to talk with friends who are on a similar journey and can help you work through stuff. Like, all of those things can feel selfish and like you're prioritizing you. And to an extent that's true, but the ripple effect, again, of that is massive. So, please understand the just the sheer impact that working on yourself and continuing to move through generational trauma, childhood trauma, all those things are just absolutely crucial when it comes to serving your child and being the best parent that you can be. So that's kind of the way that I look at the how. And again, that's kind of for me. One of the things I've reflected on is that I'm so grateful that I'm becoming a parent now, after specifically the past few years where I've done a lot of personal, emotional, spiritual growth, worked through a lot of my patterns and traumas and things like that. And, we're never fully healed, right? That's just the journey of being human. But I've worked through so much of that now, and I can see, looking back, yes, I would have always been a good parent, I would like to believe, because I care and I want to be there for a child. But what I can give a child now is just leaps and bounds more and better and more impactful than it would have been previously. So I can see that in hindsight, but also not really hindsight, because like I said, it's a continual journey, and I still want to prioritize those things for myself and make sure that I'm still doing that work in order to be able to pass these things along. Now, of course, it's a balance. You don't only want to be doing these things and have that start to take away from your time with your child or whatever. But that felt very worth mentioning, so I want to make sure I hit on that. Which, before we move into deepening your own personal purpose and sense of that, to kind of wrap us up here, please reach out with questions. As I said, I'm absolutely not the expert, obviously, 8 weeks into being a parent, but I feel very strongly about these things based on the amount of reflection that I've done over the course of, I'd say six-ish months. Halfway through the pregnancy, through birth, and now having a kid. And they just feel very, very true to me. But with that said, questions, comments, what you may know as a far more experienced parent, things that you've discovered would be very welcome. So please reach out. You can hit me up on Instagram at benjamin.m.fritz, or respond in the YouTube comments here if you're watching on YouTube, or Substack if you're listening there. Okay, Moving on to our final topic of today's recording. All right, so we talked about how if you choose the path of being a parent, that is the one and only thing you ever need to do in this lifetime in order to make a massive impact. However, if you're somebody like me and still has their own personal sense of purpose, identity, and way that you want to contribute to the world, I think this is still a really awesome situation, because now you have this individual who you can live for and create a legacy for. Yes, you always had yourself to create a legacy for, but now it's really meaningful in that you have a bloodline to really create this legacy and pass this on. So for me, I really view it as additional drive and motivation. And I should also mention that this is not something that I thought about. This is just something that, I have thought about it, but it was more just something that came about and was like a feeling, right? Like I really feel like I need to be intentional about who I am, how I am showing up in the world, what I am creating, what I am doing, and really, to me, it's like, first and foremost, you're being a role model, right? So monkey see, monkey do. Kids watch what you do. Yes, they hear your words, but that is not nearly as impactful as what you do, your actions. So I think that is, the thing that really drives me is just, I want to be a role model as a dad. And so it forces me to be more intentional about how I'm showing up and what I'm committing to, like I said, what I'm creating, what I'm sharing, what I'm putting out into the world. Because not only do I want them to see this from me and kind of learn this both inherently and explicitly, kind of want to shape themselves after me somehow, some way, right? It doesn't need to be exactly what I'm doing, but to provide some sort of inspiration and I want them to look up to me and be like, damn, like what my dad is doing is really cool. I want them to say amazing things about me. I want them to hear other people say amazing things about me and what I'm doing, whether like when I'm here, when I'm not here, when I'm dead. I want the energy that is me, whether it's literally here or I'm dead and gone. I want that to be something that is just such a positive thing for my child or children. And along with that, kind of the last thing that I think of with this is specifically as they grow and like when I am dead and gone, I want them to inherit a better world, right? Like that is something that I think we do really poorly as humans in this particular day and age, indigenous peoples. And just in the past, people had more perspective on the future and providing a sustainable future for their people. Whereas we just, like in this modern age, we suck at it. But having a child gives you a very tangible way to look into the future and consider what their world, their life is going to be like. So in my case, my kiddo who is just born, at the turn of 2022 into 2023, she will be, 80 years old. She will be in the year, or, past the year 2100, 2103. Jesus Christ. It's just like wild to think that, right? But so that gives me a tangible point to be like, oh yeah, when she's 30, like when she's my age, what will things be like? When she is 60, when she's, a parent or a grandparent, hopefully a grandparent at that point, just like what will the state of the world be? What will the environment look like? What will, just like all that you can consider now in a very tangible way. And so I think that it is just a really important thing for those of us who do choose to raise children to really take the time to think about that also, because people that are raising, or excuse me, aren't raising kids, they don't really have, or they don't have nearly, unless they really give a shit about other people and the environment in the world, which there's definitely people that do, that choose not to raise children. They don't have the same vested interest as those of us who are raising children. And there's just a fundamental, tangible connection to the future. So I think that is just really, really powerful to me, and I would encourage you to think about that as a parent if you haven't already. I'm sure some, if not all of these things, maybe even more, have crossed your mind. So yeah, thanks for hanging out and talking all things changing the world as a parent. And yeah, I would love to hear from you anything that you thought was interesting, that you agreed with, disagreed with, see differently, that I didn't mention that you think is really important. I really would love to hear it, because we're all in this together, and I think it's really important that we support other parents. I don't think that we do a great job of that in the Western world. Conversation for another time. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, and I hope you got something out of this. I will talk to you soon. Much love, Benjamin.